If your child could tell you one thing they've been afraid to say, do you think you'd be ready to hear it? Not the small stuff. Not, "You forgot to pack my lunch," or "You missed my game." The real thing. The thing they've swallowed 100 times because something told them, "This isn't safe to say out loud." Most kids have something like that. A feeling they've learned to fold up and tuck somewhere you can't see. Not because they don't love you, but because somewhere along the way, without either of you noticing, they learned that certain parts of them weren't welcome in the conversation. And the hardest part, it usually isn't one big moment that teaches them that. It's the small ones, the repeated ones, the ones that felt completely normal at the time. That's what this video is about. Not to make you feel like a bad parent, because if you're here, you're clearly not, but to shine a light on 7 habits that quietly teach kids to close themselves off from the people who love them most, and more importantly, what you can start doing differently today. These are the 7 toxic parenting traits. Number 1, competing with your own kids. This one is subtle, and it sneaks up on even the most loving parents. It sounds like, "When I was your age, I was already doing this. I had it so much harder than you." You think that's difficult? Let me tell you about difficult. It's not always mean-spirited. Sometimes it comes from a place of trying to motivate them. Sometimes it's just habit, the way we process things. But what it does, without meaning to, is turn your child's moment into your moment. Their struggle becomes a comparison. Their milestone becomes a competition. And slowly, they learn that sharing things with you doesn't feel safe because it somehow always comes back to you. Number 2, forcing them to follow your path. You worked hard to figure out what works in life. Of course you want to hand that to them. Of course you do. But there's a difference between guiding a child and deciding for a child. When we push our kids toward the career we wanted, the hobby we love, the version of success that makes us feel proud, we're not raising them. We're raising a copy of ourselves. And the painful truth is, they feel it. They feel the weight of living out someone else's dream, and some of them spend their whole lives trying to quietly escape it. Number 3, treating them like an investment. Some parents don't raise children, they raise retirement plans. And they would never say it out loud like that, but it shows up in the way they talk. "I'm doing all of this so you can take care of me one day. After everything I sacrifice, you better make something of yourself. You owe it to this family to succeed." It comes from a real place. Sacrifice is real. Struggle is real. Wanting something back after giving so much, that's human. But when a child senses that their success isn't really about them, that it's about what their success will eventually return to you, the whole thing shifts. Suddenly, their achievements aren't theirs to celebrate. They belong to the family, to the sacrifice, to the debt. And failure doesn't just feel like a setback. It feels like a betrayal. So they push themselves, not because they're passionate, not because they're curious, not because they want to, but because they are terrified of what happens to your love if they don't deliver. That's not ambition. That's anxiety wearing ambition's clothes. Your child's success should be theirs, fully and completely theirs. Not a return on your investment, not a reward for your sacrifice, just theirs. Number 4, shutting down their opinions. Because I said so. You're too young to understand. Don't argue with me. We've all said it, usually when we're tired or overwhelmed or just done. But when a child grows up in a home where their voice doesn't matter, they don't stop having opinions, they just stop sharing them with you. And that silence that feels peaceful, it isn't peace, it's distance. Number 5, discouraging them before they even start. This one breaks my heart the most, because it almost always comes from love. That's really hard to get into. "I just don't want you to be disappointed." Are you sure that's realistic? We think we're protecting them from failure, from embarrassment, from heartbreak. But what they hear is, "I don't believe you can do it." And once a child hears that from the person they love most in the world, That belief doesn't go away easily. It follows them into every room they walk into, every risk they're too afraid to take. Number 6. Making gifts feel like transactions. I bought you that. Now you need to. After everything I gave you. This one is quietly devastating because it happens so casually. When love, real love, starts to feel conditional, children don't learn gratitude. They learn anxiety. They learn to anticipate the string attached to every gift. They learn that love is something you earn, not something you're worthy of just by existing. And that lesson follows them into every relationship they'll ever have. Number 7. Always needing to be right. The parent who can never be wrong raises a child who can never be wrong either, or is convinced they're always wrong. Neither is healthy, because children don't need perfect parents. They need honest ones. Parents who can say, I made a mistake, and parents who can say, I'm sorry. Those 3 words, I was wrong, are not a sign of weakness. They are some of the most powerful things a parent can ever say. Here's the thing nobody tells you about these habits. They don't cause one big, obvious break. They cause 1,000 tiny ones. A child who is constantly competed with stops sharing their wins. A child who is never allowed to choose their own path grows up not knowing what they actually want. A child who feels like an investment struggles to feel worthy of love without earning it first. A child whose opinions are shut down learns to be quiet, not just at home, but everywhere. A child who is discouraged before they try stops trying, not just in childhood, but in life. A child who gets love with conditions attached grows up attaching conditions to love too. And a child who never sees their parents admit a mistake either becomes someone who can't, or someone who thinks they always are one. None of these things happen all at once. They happen slowly, in small, quiet moments that we barely notice, until one day, the child is grown, and the distance between you feels enormous, and neither of you fully knows when it started. That's why this matters now, while there's still time to change things. So what do you actually do with this? You don't overhaul yourself overnight. You don't need to. You just start paying attention to the moments when these patterns show up. When your child shares something they're proud of, before you say anything about your own experience, just ask them a question about theirs. Tell me more about that. That's it. That's the whole thing. When you want to push them towards something, stop and ask yourself honestly, is this for them, or is this for me? Both can be true, but knowing which is which changes everything. When you give something, let it be a gift, fully, no strings, no reminders, no ledger. Love isn't a transaction. Don't let it become one. When they share an opinion you disagree with, try, help me understand how you see it, instead of shutting it down. You don't have to agree with them. You just have to make them feel heard. When they want to try something new, lead with belief, not fear. Even if it doesn't work out, a child who knew you believed in them handles failure very differently than the ones who didn't. And when you're wrong, say it out loud, in front of them. I handled that badly. I'm sorry. Those words will do more for your relationship than anything else. Here's what I want you to take away from this. You are not a bad parent because some of these felt familiar. You are a human parent, doing your best with what you were given, by parents who were also doing their best with what they were given. These patterns don't make you a failure. Noticing them makes you exactly the kind of parent your child needs you to be, because the parents who change things, they're not the ones who never made mistakes. They're the ones who saw them and chose to do something different. The moment you decide to grow as a parent is the moment your child gets more of who you were always meant to be. If this video made you realize something, even for a second, that realization is the beginning of something really good. Share it with a parent who needs to hear this today. And if you're on this journey of growing as a parent, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is here for. We'll see you in the next one.